TV. Anyway, Roger, Gewolb joins us, and you have been with Donald Trump. Tell us what the Donald is up to at the moment.
Yes, well, I've come over to meet with the Trump people and the Biden people, really, to see what's going on. And I had the pleasure of being with him for his Christmas Eve dinner at Mar-a-Lago. And yeah, I mean, he's very interested in what the Brits think of him. And I told him that the British bookies are showing him with a very healthy lead. And yeah, it's amazing seeing him and then seeing Joe Biden, who is being blamed here a lot.
Did Joe Biden know he was Joe Biden when you met him?
I haven't met Joe Biden yet. I've been with his people, but
can I tell you what to do? No, Roger, you're making a mistake here. Just tell us you met Joe Biden. He won't know the difference. He won't know, right? if you say, I spent an hour with Biden, Biden will be like, probably did.
Well, the interesting thing, Andre, is that I notice in America, I mean, everyone I speak to, they're not talking about Gaza, and they're not talking about Ukraine. They're talking about presidential politics, and this is really hotting up. And all the different litigation battles and brickbats they're throwing at each other, all the strategic attempts to trip each other up are getting bigger and bigger.
Roger, I just want to ask you this question about Donald Trump, which worries me more than anything else. Are we now going to be in a position with the United States of America where former presidents, on Inauguration Day will have to flee the country in order to avoid prosecutions like in places like South America or Central Africa?
No, I don't think so. You see, there's a big difference in litigation in the States and in the UK. When you have an argument in America, frequently you reach for your lawyer. Lawyers run everything here. And people sue each other and deposit claims in court with much more frequency than they do at home in the UK. I mean, there's a stigma to being sued or being charged in Britain.
I thought he'd been stopped. I thought Trump. Sorry, Roger. I thought that Trump had been stopped. Have been able to stand as president.
No. This is going to be a really serious problem, Roger, isn't it? Because this is the Colorado.
In one state.
I don't understand what you just said.
Oh, sorry. Phil didn't quite come through there. Look, what Phil is alluding to is the Colorado Supreme Court has said that as a result of an allegation of insurrection, he is ineligible to become president. Right, just explain that to a UK audience.
Yeah, let me try to deal with that. Yeah, what I was going on to say is that people sue and charge much more liberally here. And, if you just look at everything that's gone on, these lawsuits, these criminal charges, they're not going to come to trial before the election. In one case, they want to have all the prosecution and all the witnesses in one court. That no lawyer in his right mind would do that. That would annoy the judge so much and upset the jury. These are all tactics. These are not trials that are really going to go anywhere. Let me just finish, if I may. It's all a show. It's all a way of stopping Trump, and they're going to try to do very much the same thing to Biden. Now, Colorado is a joke. What Colorado has done is taken a clause from the United States Constitution, which was used following the Civil War, so that Confederate Southern generals could not re-enter politics when their states rejoined the Union. This has been in the closet for hundreds of years. You cannot deny somebody the right to vote for somebody. This is going to go to the Supreme Court, and it's going to be thrown out. It's a joke. But, everybody on both sides is dragging out everything that they can. I will tell you something.
Just to double down on that. Roger, give us a second. Just to double down on that. There is a clause in the United States Constitution that says that if you've been convicted of insurrection, you are not allowed to run for office. The Colorado Supreme Court have decided that a man who has not been convicted for insurrection should be disbarred for insurrection. I mean, what a joke.
They're not disbarred. They've said his name should be taken off the ballot. Now, they tried it, the same thing in New Hampshire, in Minnesota, and in Michigan, and they failed. In Colorado, they got it through. In Georgia, they found a jury that awarded $150 million judgment against Rudy Giuliani, who had to declare bankruptcy for helping Trump. All of these things are tactics. They are not like if somebody sued Andre Walker, you know, this would be a serious thing.
Can I tell you, Roger, I have been, loads of people have attempted to sue me, and I'm going to tell you about the only two style of letters I have. Right, so what I did, I was 18 the first time somebody tried to sue me, but I wrote back to the solicitor, "Dear Sir / Madam, thank you for your valued correspondence. However, as a result of the number of letters Andre Walker receives, he cannot respond to them all personally. However, your comments have been noted. Send that back." But then there was another one, a journalist who I'd publicly accused of getting drunk and making up stories. And I wrote back to him saying, "I want to go to the High Court to test that allegation, and I'm going to win." I'll tell you what, the Mail on Sunday have not been in touch since. Anyway, over to Phil.
Yeah, no, I was just...
Okay, well, I mean, the answer to your question is that everything going on here, and you're going to see the same thing going on against what the papers are calling more and more the Biden crime family. Yes. These are tactics. Now, I was going to say earlier that people are not talking about Gaza and not talking about Ukraine. They're talking about the presidential election. And one of the things that they're saying a lot of right now is that we wouldn't have a Gaza and we wouldn't have a Ukraine if Sleepy Joe Biden hadn't blocked the Abraham Accords, where Saudi Arabia was going to sign in a matter of weeks a peace deal with Israel. We wouldn't have the border problems. We wouldn't have all these things if Biden, with Obama behind him, hadn't sabotaged them so that Trump couldn't get credit for those good things he's done. And people are now, as this Gaza thing takes off, they're getting really mad about it as they want more and more money for Ukraine. Americans are getting really, really upset about it. So that Roger, is the main topic here.
Roger, what do you rate Trump's chances then at the presidential election? Is he in front of Biden?
The honorable profession of turf accounting, which originated in Britain and has existed for hundreds of years, is such that the bookies, as you know, almost never get it wrong.
But he hasn't actually got the nomination yet.
I told President Trump last night that his odds with the bookies in Britain have moved from a 20 to almost a 40% lead over Biden in the last 48 hours.
Wow.
Amazing. And what do you attribute that to?
He is so far ahead of every other candidate that basically he's refused to participate in the debates because he's characterized them as contests for who is going to be his vice president. And so it would be unseemly of him to get in the sandbox with all these unruly children fighting.
Roger, do you mind if I just change the subject completely? Because we've got Keith Fraser here from the Israel Solidarity Campaign, and I know that there has been a significant, it's movement, not campaign, isn't it? You tell me that every time. Look, there has been, as this year draws to a close, look, I've got friends of mine who have contacted me wishing me a Merry Christmas, who are perhaps Israeli or Jewish. I've said that the cause of freedom has been undermined this year. You know, terrorists have struck a blow against decency this year. Although I have said, they've thrown everything they've got at the good people, and we're only just getting started. But I just wondered if I could hand over to Keith to chat perhaps about what your understanding is, Roger, of the position vis-a-vis the defence of Israel in the United States of America, because it's going to be critical, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, none of this is anything new. All of this, of course, happened in 1973. Israel let its guard down somewhat, and something quite similar happened. and it's happened throughout history, and it's a very difficult position because with Hamas. I mean, I read this morning an article that Hamas has virtually admitted that it's using the humanitarian aid for its own purposes, not distributing it in some places. I mean, they really don't care. The Hamas and Hezbollah, all of these terrorist groups, I can remember a couple of years ago, Andre, they announced in sort of this time of year, November, actually, early December, the head of, I think it was Al-Qaeda, said every Muslim in the world must go out and put a bullet in the head of a Christian for Christmas. I mean, the Jews and Israel are just the canary in the mine. Everybody else is next. And so these people who are marching on the street for a ceasefire, how do you have a ceasefire with somebody who says they're going to do it all over again, the minute they get a chance? And even if you could, they're not going to stop at Israel. They are following an ancient sect of Islam that says everybody who's an infidel, who isn't a practicing Muslim, in their way of practicing, should be eliminated, eradicated if they won't convert. It's crazy.
That's been confirmed by Hamas. And it's interesting. A few years ago, I went on a rival station, and the topic of conversation was, should we help and go to war against ISIS? Something like that. And I phoned up this particular station, not mentioning any names, but it does have quite a left-wing narrative, I would say. Now, the presenter does anyway. And I said, look, we have to deal with all these organisations, be they ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram. They all, and I mentioned Hamas. And as soon as I mentioned Hamas, he cut me off and said, you were talking sense a minute ago, but why did you bring in Hamas? Now, of course, recently, many people have likened Hamas with ISIS. And we know that Israel is at the front line of the war against the Islamist terror campaign against not just Israel, but the Western world. So you're rightly said, but what I wanted to bring you up on, though, Roger, was you mentioned earlier that had Biden not been in power, we wouldn't have Gaza, we wouldn't have Ukraine. I can't necessarily agree with that because, particularly in Gaza, you've got the Hamas leadership who've been in power for about 16 years, had billions of aid, more than any other people around the world, spent it on, no, not infrastructure, no, not hospitals, no, not schools. They've spent it on terrorist infrastructure. They've created an unbelievable terrorist state.
I'm sorry, if I can cut in, I didn't actually say that. What I said is that is what some people are saying. I think you're going down.
Beg your pardon.
I think you're going down a different track. What they meant is not what you said, which is completely correct. What they meant is that had Saudi signed the Abraham Accords, the Arab countries never would have let them get away with this. They would have threatened them. They would have aligned with Israel in the new Abraham Pact, which was weeks away, apparently. One newsreader here said the Crown Prince, was on this. He was across this only days before.
But what difference would it have made to this? I know that Iran, obviously, behind everything. Why do you think it would have made that much of a difference? I still think the war would have gone ahead.
Because they would. Well, you may be right. But I'm just telling you. I'm just reporting. I'm just being a journalist here. But yeah. I mean, but what they're saying is because they would have taken the stick away from the terrorists by having the alignment in the Abraham Accords. Now, you mentioned Iran. A number of people, including a very well-respected gentleman named Christopher Ruddy, who is a great geopolitics expert and also happens to own Newsmax here, which is the rival to Fox and CNN, has written very recently that actually behind all of this is Vladimir Putin. That Putin not only wants to restore Mother Russia to her former glory, but he actually, and this is strange because we haven't really heard this from Putin before, but Chris says that this is what's really behind all of this. Putin is scornful of the West's, quote, satanic, unquote, ways, and is using Iran as his proxy, who in turn use Hamas and Hezbollah and all the rest of them as their proxies to basically, get rid of us. And it's Putin who wants to control the universe, and that's who's behind all of this.
Okay, look, Roger, we're gonna leave it there, but I just want to congratulate the leaders of Hamas this Christmas. They've done phenomenally well. The three leaders, Ismail Haniyeh is worth $4 billion. Never had a proper job. Just lives off aid from the West. What are some of the other ones? Oh, they've done... Well, Yasser Arafat, of course, was worth $1.1 billion when he died. All he did was walk around gobbing off. So what about some of the other ones? Well, in fact, actually, we won't bother listing the names, but I'm going to tell you, and I want to congratulate you as the British taxpayer, because you have made the top three Hamas leaders the richest political leaders in the world, self-made from politics, stealing money, $11 billion collectively. $11 billion, that's 11,000 million pounds. 11,000 million pounds. They live in Qatar, living it up. And by the way, I have some respect for Peter Tatchell, who went round the Free Palestine March saying free them from Hamas because it's a dictatorial government. I will tell you something else that I think is absolutely despicable. The books, the school books that preach that Jews wipe their backside with the Quran are all funded by the European Union and you, the British taxpayer. We are the people that wind this dispute up, and we are unwilling and unable to take action. And I'll say this as a final comment, and you're welcome to get in touch and disagree with me. I say that the Israeli Defence Force now should consider both the Red Cross and the UN enemy combatants in Gaza. They have dumped all neutrality and are now actively assisting Hamas. More next.
We're here.
Thanks for joining us.
You're with Talk TV, on radio, online.
We're on your smart speaker as well.
Criminals using XL bully dogs as weapons to threaten others.
No matter how well trained, most dog owners will tell you a dog